I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. A 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit Ecuador just after 9 p.m. local time. According to preliminary information, the epicenter of the earthquake was located nearly 10 kilometers from Cumandá in the province of Chimborazo. The quake was also felt in the capital Quito, in the coastal port of Guayaquil, and other cities. There are reports of some damages in central provinces. Other earthquakes hit the area with just minutes of difference, one of 5.9 magnitude in Panama and another of 5.8 in Chile. Still in Ecuador, just one day after 92 Venezuelan migrants flew home, another 100 Venezuelans have registered for the return to the homeland plan. The Venezuelan authorities say the government is planning to send another flight to Ecuador as part of this program. Until the Venezuelan government confirms the date of the flight, the embassies continue to analyze the individual cases.
I want to congratulate this government plan promoted by President Nicolás Maduro, because many of the Venezuelans that are still here don't have money to go back. I think this is a great motivation for us to know that open doors will be open to welcome us back.
I thank President Nicolás Maduro from the bottom of my heart for having implemented this plan. I'm not sorry for saying this. I am Chavista, and I'm going back to my country with pride.
The first group of 92 Venezuelan migrants who asked to be repatriated from Ecuador landed in Caracas early Thursday morning. They returned in a government charter plane, and their families were eagerly awaiting at the Simón Bolívar International Airport. The migrants shared some of the hardships they faced after migrating and talked of their hopes of a new start back at home.
In Ecuador, they're afraid of us. You could just tell. We were pushed to the side. Finding work was very difficult. And when we did, we were exploited. We were paid much less than the minimum wage. I couldn't stay there. I wanted to come back home.
A U.S. Navy plane has arrived in Ecuador as part of the bilateral security agreement signed between Ecuador and the United States. Many analysts are questioning this deal and are concerned about Ecuador's future.
Ecuador's Defense Minister Osvaldo Jarrín and Interior Minister Maria Paula Romo welcomed the United States Navy plane in Guayaquil. The U.S. Navy flyovers are part of the military cooperation agreed between the two countries.
The P-3 Orion airplane allows us to strengthen our monitoring, surveillance and detection operations, not only for transnational crimes, like drug trafficking, but different types of transnational crimes.
For some security experts, the current government's proximity to the U.S. government and its military institutions has raised concern. According to the analysts, the U.S. Navy flyovers over Ecuador's airspace violates the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
This airplane has the capacity to carry missiles, bombs, etc. So this is not just an intelligence airplane. That's what our main concern is. The government said it was going to be only for intelligence and data collection purpose. So why is it equipped to carry bombs and fully capable of striking?
After several violent attacks on the northern border of Ecuador, the government decided to sign a military cooperation deal with the U.S. The government also decided to invite the U.S. Office of Security Cooperation.
We must ask ourselves what Ecuador's role will be in the policy the U.S. is developing towards Venezuela and its government. I think a policy is being consolidated in the Andean region, and Colombia's role is very important due to its long tradition of military intervention in regional politics, especially now that Duque is leading the country.
After the arrival of the U.S. Navy plane, several analysts and security experts have decided to form an organization that will closely analyze the bilateral agreement. Meanwhile, opposition and social organizations have called for a protest on 13th of September in Quito to condemn the latest economic measures and foreign policies implemented by President Lenin Moreno. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Quito, Ecuador.
Nicaraguans have condemned the United States for calling the country a regional threat. The U.S. made the comment at the United Nations Security Council meeting to discuss the civil unrest in the country. The Nicaraguan government has strongly rejected the comment and also ordered the expulsion of the United Nations Human Rights Delegation from the country. Thousands of Nicaraguans marched in the capital of Managua to show their support for President Daniel Ortega.
Le decimos a los gobernantes norteamericanos.
We say to the U.S. government, we say to the U.S. congressmen, we say to them that if they want to contribute to the peace in Nicaragua, they must respect Nicaragua as a sovereign nation. The best thing they can do and should do is to not mess with Nicaragua, to respect Nicaragua.
And Cuba's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs also reacted to the comments.
As the first act of its September presidential period ahead of the Security Council, the United States imposed the inclusion of a topic regarding Nicaragua. They manipulated the proceedings and violated the UN's agreements in order to do this. With disrespectful and interventionist statements, the permanent representative of the United States made a call to take actions against Nicaragua and to maintain the dirty war policy against Venezuela, also violating every international rule while it insulted Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega.
La política de guerra sucia contra Venezuela.
The UN Security Council, Russia and China on Wednesday demanded that the U.S. respects the sovereignty of Nicaragua. They stated that the country is not a threat to international peace and that therefore the issue of Nicaragua should not be submitted to a discussion of any kind. They demanded respect for the nation's self-determination. Bolivian President Evo Morales also took to Twitter to welcome the push from Russia and China against the United States. He added that U.S. President Donald Trump should lift the economic blockade against the country. Now to news from Brazil, where right-wing presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro has been stabbed. It happened during a crowded campaign rally in Juiz de Fora in Minas Gerais. The wound was superficial and he's recovering in the hospital. The attacker has been detained by the police. And Brazil's Supreme Court has rejected the latest appeal by the legal team of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. This essentially means that Lula is out of the presidential race. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Ignacio Lemos, has more.
People in Brazil are still reeling from the surprise decision by Supreme Federal Court Justice Edson Fachin to turn down the appeal of Lula's defense team. Lula's lawyers had asked that the court adhere to a recent UN resolution saying the jailed former president should be allowed to participate in the presidential race. Fachin's stance is particularly surprising since last Friday he warned the Supreme Electoral Court that the UN's resolution should be taken into account. But he has now obviously gone back on his words. This decision by Judge Fachin and the recent verdict from the Supreme Electoral Court, which said Lula is ineligible to participate in the elections, leaves the left-wing leader completely out of the presidential race. These decisions have come despite popular support for Lula and the fact that he still leads in all polls by a wide margin. Social movements are planning various mobilizations in support of the former president and to reject these decisions.
That was Ignacio Lemos from Sao Paulo. Coming up, more stories. We'll be back.
Trump's Gestapo is at it again. Trump's goons are denying more and more passports to U.S. citizens with Mexican heritage, arresting them for supposedly questionable paperwork, and even canceling passports of Mexican Americans currently living outside the country, leaving them stranded abroad. Trump keeps inciting racism and continues to paint the U.S. as a society of white people, erasing the legacy of immigrants who made the country more culturally diverse. I mean, does he think taco bowls just fall from the sky? In June, he set up a denaturalization task force to strip citizenship for people his administration deemed suspect, questioning their applications, digging up all misdemeanors and convictions in order to claim they lied and never disclose them. They don't even care if you lived in the U.S. for decades. And there's the Democrats. Last week, they expedited votes on lifetime appointments for 11 of Trump's federal judge nominees, just so they could get back to their districts to campaign for the midterm elections and be home with their families. Folks, it's imperative to organize against Trump's policies, but also this November, to vote out any politician who's not willing to lay down their career for immigrants' rights.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The International Monetary Fund has said that it plans to wrap up talks to strengthen a $50 billion financing deal with Argentina as rapidly as possible. The announcement came Thursday as the country's peso and stocks climbed for a second straight day. Late on Wednesday, Economy Minister Nicolás Duhovny said he had enormous confidence that Argentina would be able to reach an agreement with the IMF on early disbursements from that loan. This was approved in June before the peso suffered a sharp fall in the first week of September. In Costa Rica, the weight of corruption is reflected in the fiscal deficit that the country is facing. Let's learn more about this.
With a fiscal deficit of more than 7% per year, the Costa Rican government is promoting a controversial new law in the Legislative Assembly and is promoting an increase in taxes.
We all would like to earn more money, but we must face our reality. Without adjustment, the situation will get worse.
All of the executive administrations of the past decades were involved in corruption scandals, including Caja Fiscal, Ice Alcatel, La Trocha Cruzitas, political campaigns, and China's cement. Corruption is also one of the reasons for the reduction in public funds.
I believe that the Costa Rican former president's corruption cases had a great effect on us. It removed the blindfold from our eyes.
According to an expert in international transparency, sanctions are one of the main problems in the fight against corruption.
Effective sanctions are one of our main weaknesses. Many of these cases end with judicial dismissals because they are very difficult to corroborate.
In the last decade, more relevant accusations have reached the court, and for those that do, typically don't face sanctions.
The district attorney's office could not have had enough clues at the moment to prove them guilty.
The cost of corruption doesn't only have monetary consequences, it can also affect public trust in institutions.
Every time there's a corruption case, the trust and credibility in the public institutions decreases. Citizens still feel resentful regarding corruption cases.
Citizens from Central America have a medium to high perception of corruption, according to international transparency reports. Corruption has involved not only the prominent former president's case, but also private companies and citizens themselves.
The dispute between the Guyana Teachers Union and the government will go to arbitration. The union had said they were willing to accept a 15% wage increase, down from the original 40% that they requested. But after a 2-hour meeting at the Department of Labor, it was decided that the dispute will go into arbitration. This means that the teachers will return to classrooms in full on Monday. The meeting between the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the unions has concluded, but no agreement has been reached. The strike called for Friday to protest the closure of the Petrotrin refinery is still on. But the government says it hopes that good sense will prevail. Among the decisions coming out of that meeting is that a date has been decided for the decommissioning of the Petrotrin refinery. It will cease operations in December.
We have reiterated the point on more than one occasion that the refinery is a loss-making entity, and what the analysis has shown is that where we should be heading is in ensuring that exploration and production is the area in which we will find the best solution for dealing with what is taking place at Petrotrin at this time.
The president of the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, Ansel Roget, also reacted to the outcome of the meeting. He expressed his disapproval of the closure of the refinery.
If devastation comes, God forbid, as a result of some tragedy of that nature, it is the workers who will have to pick up the pieces. And those workers throughout the country, not just Petrotrin workers, those workers who bring revenue based on what they do, those workers ought to be treated with a level of respect. While you talk about respect, we don't see it.
It's been 1 year since one of the most powerful hurricanes on record, Hurricane Irma, devastated countries in the Caribbean. On September 6, 2017, the Category 5 hurricane made landfall on Antigua and Barbuda. Antiguans thought they'd been spared. That is until the sun rose and the devastation to Barbuda became visible. The name Irma has since been retired from the hurricane database. The island of Barbuda was completely evacuated. And just as Barbuda continues to recover, tensions between the central government and Barbuda remain. The government says Barbudans who were transported to Antigua haven't returned home to help with the recovery effort.
What I would have loved to see, though, is more participation from our Barbudan brothers and sisters into rebuilding Barbuda. I would have, instead of a situation of trying to sensationalize these issues in the public domain, that there would be some commitment and focus on returning to Barbuda to rebuild Barbuda and to make it better than what it was before.
St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands was also devastated by Hurricane Irma. The storm pounded St. Thomas and St. John for hours. Roofs were blown off, buildings completely destroyed, homes flooded, and residents lost their lives. 1 year later, progress has been made. Power is 100% restored. The federal government has poured billions of dollars into the local economy. Schools, for the first time since these storms, open on Tuesday as normal. We'll take one last short break, but stay with us.
an occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. A Yemeni rebel group has refused to attend the United Nations-led peace talks in Geneva. The Houthi rebel delegation said it won't attend the peace talks on Yemen until the UN complies with their 3 conditions. Their demands are to transport wounded rebels to Oman and also take them back home after receiving treatment, and finally guarantee their delegation can safely return to Sana'a, the capital held by them after the talks. And Yemen's foreign minister told reporters that as a result, the government delegation will now have to decide on whether to withdraw from the talks. Martin Griffiths, the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, has called for the Houthi delegation to attend the talks, which they say are aimed at relaunching peace negotiations after 3 years. Families in Yemen have been gathering at a new cemetery built to hold the remains of the children killed in a recent Saudi-led airstrike. The strike on a school bus in Dahyan killed 40 children. It targeted the Houthi stronghold. The wreckage of the bus has now become a playground. Close to it is the cemetery in Sada, where the graves are toppled with portraits of the children buried there. Damascus has rejected statements by the French government about carrying out an attack on Syrian military installations to prevent operations against terrorist positions. The details with our correspondent Hisham Wanous.
The government and the people of Syria claim that French President Emmanuel Macron, French Chancellor, the President of the United States and the English government threatened to attack Syria if chemical weapons are used during the operations against terrorist groups in Syria territory. Some people say that the purpose of the threats by the West is to avoid terrorist groups in Syria being neutralized. The aim of the West is to fragment the country and establish dominion over Syrian territory through terrorist groups. However, anti-terrorist operations will continue to be carried out through targeted attacks to avoid civilian casualties.
El fracaso de esos planes contra Siria, sobre todo fragmentar al país árabe, desintegrarlo y asimismo también derrocar a la fuerza al legítimo gobierno del presidente de Siria, Bashar al-Assad. Las autoridades sirias critican estas declaraciones, al igual que la población civil que afirman surgen de países que alegan preocuparse por la población civil y afirman que están trabajando para evitar una masacre humanitaria a gran escala en Idlib, pero realmente estos países.
And that was Hisham Wanous from Damascus. Now to another story. India's top court has scrapped a colonial-era ban on gay sex in a landmark ruling. It's being considered as a breakthrough in a socially conservative country where homosexuality has been a taboo. Gay sex had been punishable with a sentence of up to 10 years. Activists and the LGBTI community celebrated the news and hope that India continues to work towards equality. A third summit between the leaders of North and South Korea will take place on September 18 in Pyongyang. It will focus on how to achieve the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. The announcement was made by Chung Eui-yong, South Korea's special envoy, at the end of a visit to Pyongyang. The South Korean President Moon Jae-in has already met twice with his North Korean counterpart, Jong-un, on 27th of April and May 26. They agreed on the goal of achieving a complete denuclearization of the peninsula and ending hostile actions. Pyongyang is preparing for celebrations for the 17th anniversary of the founding of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The mass games are an art form which involve tens of thousands of performers who participate in massive, synchronized displays of art, dance, and gymnastics, much like the opening ceremony of the Olympics. The DPRK's military parade and other high-profile events will also be featured beginning on Sunday. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But this and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. Here you can find all of our stories, everything updated through countries and through topic as well. And be sure to also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.